Hello, and welcome to Yesterday, Today, and Forever, a virtual ministry of the Churches of Christ. It is our desire to present to the 21st century person the faith of the first century Christians. We seek unity through the acceptance of the faith that was once and for all time delivered unto the saints, a system of faith which first began to be spoken by our Lord prior to his crucifixion, and was later confirmed to the saints by the apostles and inspired writers of the New Testament. Thus a faith from yesterday to today and into forever. Our speaker is Brian Barrett, who preaches for the church at Bear Branch, in Spurlockville, West Virginia. We encourage all persons interested in the faith of our fathers to open their Bibles, as we search the Scriptures, for these eternal truths, which can lead Christians back into unity as the family of God. Now, here is Brian.
Good morning. We're studying this morning from the book of Revelation chapter 20, and we're going to pick up at verse 7 as we kind of finish up this chapter. We've spent some time looking at the subject of the 1,000 years and the kingdom and church. Today, we want to look toward the end of things. Now, again, we would say that there are really no signs of Jesus coming per se. Jesus made it clear that the day and the hour knoweth no one, not even the angels in heaven. That was something that the Father had reserved unto himself. As to how long he would continue, according to Peter in 2 Peter 3:9, to suffer with us. How long he would suffer with mankind through the preaching and teaching of the gospel. But as we come into the 7th verse, we look at a time which we might declare to be the end of things as we know it, or leading into that time. In verse 7 it says, "And when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison, and he shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. And they went up on the breadth of the earth and compassed the camp of the saints about, and the beloved city, and fire came down from God out of heaven and devoured them. And the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are, and shall be tormented day and night forever and ever." Now, we just want to, again, look at those verses right now, and then we will move on. The 1,000 years being a time when the saints ruled and reigned with Christ, being the kingdom age of the church here on earth, looking for and participating in the things of Christianity, we can, from a historical context, see how that religion associated with Christ and the gospel went into all of the world, and the dominion of God and Jesus through the preaching of the gospel, the dispelling of the idols, pushing back of darkness, went on a process of time literally into all the world. And through the preaching and teaching of the gospel, there was and is deliverance to those who were deceived by the devil. And again, as we've talked about in this, whatever the binding of Satan was, it is not something that keeps him completely away from the people of God. As we mentioned, 1 Corinthians 10 talks about God will not suffer us to be tempted above which we are able. But Peter also in 1 Peter 5 says that our adversary, the devil, is still walking about as a roaring lion, seeking, looking for whom he may devour. But it is the preaching and the teaching of the gospel that pushed back the forces of Rome. The leadership of Rome eventually converts to Christianity. The old worship of Rome and the idols and all of that is pushed back. And literally the gospel went into all the world. When we look at the history of the world about Christ, we can see whether, again, we are pleased with the way in which it was handled. Nonetheless, it was pushed forth into all the world. Some were compelled to convert to Christ, to embrace Christ under the pain of death. There was a time, of course, that the Roman Church persecuted pagans and pagan culture. When we read about the history of America, it's hard to read about the history of America and the history of South America because, again, those embracing Christ came in and pushed much of the beliefs and much of the worship and the way that things were away. Again, if you watch anything on the History Channel besides Ancient Aliens, you've probably seen the fact that, again, as the Spanish came into America, many of the places where the Native Americans had built their centers of worship and religion, the Catholic Church destroyed them and built Catholic church buildings on those sites. And when the Spanish went into Central America, South America, we read about that. They burned the books and texts of those who and their beliefs. And again, the Spanish claimed that for their king and also for Christ. And so many of those religions and many of the things associated with that were pushed back. Now, again, as I say, I don't always understand nor agree with the way in which it was done, but nonetheless it was done. There was a preaching and teaching of the gospel, and that has went out into the world. But in the course of time, again, the devil being who he is, again, he is a manipulator. He is subtle. He causes all kinds of chaos when he can. And so here in verse 7, it talks about the time that when this time is expired or expiring, one of the things to be noted is the devil will be loosed for a little season. The influence and the power of the gospel, as we have seen historically, will begin to wane. As the beast and the false prophet deceived the nations before, there is coming a time that the devil, and through whatever means, it's not specifically spelled out here, but he will gain what he believes to be an upper hand in the sense that he will figure out, he will find, he will develop a way in which he can begin to deceive the nations. And again, as I said, we have to always be careful about trying to guess about the coming of Jesus and those things. However, and I will say a however to that, there has been in the last 150 to 200 years a change in, again, the impact of the preaching of the gospel throughout Europe and places where the Reformation started and the Restoration started. We have seen dwindling populations of people who, again, have become sort of secular. I don't know, humanistic. I don't know, you can call it agnostic. Some of them are just atheistic. We had a nation of Russia, the old Russian government that comes along, who embrace atheism. There is no God. We have seen alongside, since about 700 AD, we see the preaching and teaching of Islam going out into the world. And now Islam is competing with Christianity for numbers. And I was preparing this morning's lesson and some things for tomorrow about prayer. And so I went, as I many times do at the start, I went into Google and online to see what was there and to think about the things that were written. And I asked about some things of prayer. And when I pushed enter, it came up with examples of Muslim prayer, teaching children how to pray the Muslim prayer. And so again, I wasn't specific, I just mentioned prayer, but it's interesting that rather than Google assuming I was talking about Christianity, one of the first things that pops up is about Islam and Muslim practices in prayer. And so with the steady rise of Islam to compete with Christianity, as well as secular humanism, which again teaches that there is no God, evolution is what is again causing the things that we see, caused the things which we see, and there is no God. And so in the span of the last couple hundred years especially, there have been, again, many things happen that has caused, as we see this morning, there to not be as many people in the assembly, not as many people interested in Christianity. And of course, the devil also through worldliness has deceived many. The more opportunities we have, especially in our country and in, again, the more advanced countries, we see that again, rather than building Christianity, they're building worldly pursuits. People are more interested in sports, they're more interested in various other things, recreational activities, all of that at the expense again of Christianity. Now again, I'm not going to try and guess dates, times, places in regard to that. But I do know that there is sufficient deception that has went forth, that has turned the tide of Christianity. Again, not just the Church of Christ, but Christianity as a whole. And all that again operates under that banner. And again, we see the impact and the influence every day. We also see it in our world. We see how that has caused safety, security, a sense of well-being and peace to be removed. Because, it's every evening, it seems, on the news, someone has went crazy again, as I perceive it, and has shot somewhere, run over somebody, done something, and we see the value of life and everything else, again, being replaced. The values that Christianity sought to instill in us are slowly being removed. And the nations today are being deceived, and that deception, the power of that deception is rising. Now, to what extent that is a fulfillment of the things that are mentioned here, but nonetheless, John tells us that there will be this set period of time when the belief in Christ and Christianity and godliness and all of those things has its impact on the world to push back the forces of darkness, to push back spiritual wickedness in heavenly places, to fight against the idols and various beliefs. But there is a set time, not necessarily a literal 1,000 years, but the 1,000 years are there to mark a period of time which is limited. It may be a good bit of time, and as we see it now, Christianity has existed for almost 2,000 years. Again, by the time we get to, if we live that long, by the time we reach 2033, the church will have its 2000th anniversary, its second millennium, moving into the second millennium. And so as we think about that, we know literally that 1,000 years has well passed. And of course, we're looking at what will be after that. But there will be a period of time when things will not be going so well. There is a time when, again, the saints and the people of God and this whole kingdom will have, its golden age, if you want to call it that, from the earthly perspective. Now, eternally, there is the true golden age that's still yet to come, and we'll look at that when we get into later. But that which has imprisoned him, that which has restrained him, that which Paul says perhaps has even kept us from being tempted above that which we are able. We are moving to a point in time that, again, we're going to be compelled to do certain things. Again, we don't have a choice. The government, we've worked fairly well up to this point, but the time is coming that government is again going to force upon us the fact that we have to accept things like same-sex marriages. We're going to have to accept that as a church, or again, they'll take away our nonprofit status, and we'll end up having again to flee into the caves and corners. The government, again, is turning to a place where Christianity and the things of Christianity are not necessarily the things that our government is supporting now. In case you haven't seen that, and in case you haven't understood that, we are moving away from a Christ-based legal system, and we're moving into a humanistic, atheistic, worldly view kind of background that you can't discriminate for this, you can't discriminate for that, and everything Christianity stands for, according almost to government now, is some type of discrimination. How long will it be before we can't discriminate between those who are Christians and non-Christians? Well, again, we're not supposed to now, because according to the Bill of Rights and some of the things that we have out there, you can't discriminate against people based on religion. So again, it's the devil is very cunning, he's very crafty, and he has placed and set the world up for some interesting things, I believe, that's going to take place. The church has rested on its laurels. It has went through its Laodicea period where it's neither warm nor cold. Its lukewarmness has allowed the door to be opened up to many deceitful ways and things, all the way back to the Scopes monkey trial and all of that. It's the last couple hundred years especially. But again, he will go out to deceive the nations once again, which are on the four corners. Gog and Magog, which again was countries or territory north of Israel. And it's, again, don't misunderstand what I'm saying, but it's interesting that Russia, which, again, many people will interpret even today, that Gog and Magog is a northern nation or northern kingdom, and that is the kingdom which today promotes atheism and has a antagonistic nature towards the things of God. And so, again, the devil using those things will go forth to deceive the nations, to be at war with those who have embraced, those who have been a part of that. They will go, it says, upon the breadth of the earth and compass the camp of the saints. Wherever the saints are, and that language there, the camp of the saints, we would understand if again, we were reading this from the perspective of that time, our minds would have quickly went to the camp of the saints, which was the camp of Israel when it was there, as Israel was, again, moving toward the promised land, the places where the saints were, the camp of the saints, and the beloved city. Well, the beloved city is not Jerusalem, because that city has already been judged in this book. And so the beloved city is the heavenly Jerusalem. It is the church. It is the things of God. And so the devil goes forth upon the camp of the saints, upon this beloved city that we've talked about from Hebrews chapter 12, which constitutes the church. And so again, the forces of evil go forth to deceive, to take away the power and the influence of the church. Now, the interesting thing is it doesn't tell us the kingdom age, the full age that we see here, is referred to as 1,000 years. And Satan's being loosed is for, we're told here, a short time. He shall be loosed out of his prison, and he will go forth on the breadth of the earth to encompass the saints of God. But in the process of that time, when things look like they're about to go fully backwards again, we're told the fire came down out of heaven and consumed them. And of course, we know the language of that. Paul, speaking in 2 Corinthians, the first chapter, tells us there that the Lord will be revealed from heaven in flaming fire, taking vengeance on them that know not God, and obey not the gospel, these will be punished with an everlasting destruction from the presence of God and from the glory of his power. And so we're told by Peter in 2 Peter 3 that the day of the Lord will come. The heavens shall pass away with a great noise. The elements shall melt with fervent heat. The works that are therein shall be burned up. And so the language that we see here is consistent with what we're told will take place. We're told the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are, and shall be tormented day and night forever and ever. Matthew 25, verse 41 talks about hell as being a place which was prepared for the devil and his angels. And Matthew 25 is the one there where we read about 31 through 46, the final judgment scene, where, again, as Jesus said, the hour was coming, John 5, 28, 29, when all that are in the grave shall come forth, and they that have done good, the resurrection of life, they that have done evil, to the resurrection of damnation. All of these things talk about the end. These are all things consistent with the end. The hell is a place prepared for the devil and his angels, and so the devil and his angels are cast in to that lake of fire along with the beast and the false prophet. All of those things. This is the second death. Those who were not written in the Lamb's book of life were cast into that fire, and so they will be tormented forever and ever. And also we're told that those who have not been faithful to God, that these shall go into everlasting punishment, but the righteous into life eternal. And when Jesus sentences them, he sentences them to go into that place of torment which is prepared for the devil and his angels. And so we have all of those things going on. So we have a period of time toward the end that things get just a little quaky and shaky for a period of time. But as Paul says, we who rest and trust in the Lord look for the Lord's coming in that judgment. And Paul says we can rest with the Lord then, so shall we ever be with the Lord. 1 Thessalonians 4:13 following, the dead in Christ shall rise first. We which are alive and remain shall be called up, and so shall we ever be with the Lord. And so we see all of those things taking place. And so with that, with the coming of the fire, it says, I saw a great white throne, and him that sat on it, from whose face the earth and heaven fled away, and there was found no place for them. Peter tells us, nevertheless, we, according to his promise, look for a new heaven and a new earth, wherein dwells righteousness. And so with God's coming, Jesus coming in flaming fire, taking vengeance, the heavens and earth shall pass away with great noise, the elements melt with fervent heat. Once all of those things are done, John says, there was no more place. And I saw the dead, small and great. That means everybody from Lazarus, the beggar on the street, to Solomon, who was the wisest man. Small and great stand before God. And the books were opened, and another book was opened, which was the book of life. And the dead were judged out of those things which are written in the books according to their works. And that's exactly what we see taking place in Matthew 25, verses 31 to 46. Jesus talks about when he was hungered and sick and in prison and all those situations where they were in, what they did, how they reacted, how they didn't react. And as Jesus says when he comes again, that all will be gathered, all the nations will be gathered together. They'll be separated as a shepherd separates his sheep from the goats. And we're told that according to 2 Corinthians 5, that we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ to give an account of the things done in this body, whether they're good or whether they're evil. And so the picture is what they call, and what we see here as the great white throne judgment. The books are open, books plural. And of course it kind of depends on when you were alive, by what means you will be judged. We can't expect that Adam and Eve will be judged by the New Testament. We can't expect for those who are Jews under the old law to be judged by the New Testament. And so whatever the system was under the patriarchal period, we really don't have a written document other than perhaps the book of Job that would allude to the patriarchal time. But again, those who were of the nations, of the patriarchs, were judged out of those things. And so out of the books, whichever book applies to us, we will be held accountable. Jesus said in John 12, verse 48, "He that rejecteth me and receiveth not my words, have one that judgeth him. The word that I have spoken, the same shall judge him in the last day." And so we're going to be judged by the New Testament and by the teachings of Jesus and the apostles, all those things that he taught them, commanded them to observe. And so we're told again that they were judged out of the book. And the sea, we're told, gave up the dead which were in them. Death and hell delivered up the dead which were in them. And they were judged every man according to their works. Now, in 1 Corinthians 15:26, Paul says that the last enemy to be overcame before Jesus delivers the kingdom up to the Father is death. When he's put down all rule, all authority, the last enemy, which is death, when that takes place, we're told that he will deliver the kingdom up to God the Father, that God may be all in all. That God again will be honored in all ways. The devil and his angels have been cast into the lake of fire. Those who were not found written in the Lamb's book of life, these were cast into the lake of fire. Now, when Jesus comes again, all, and what he tells us in John 5:28-29, the hour is coming, hour, singular, not hours, plural. But the hour is coming when all that are in the grave shall hear his voice and come forth. And so in the resurrection, there is no more death, and no one else is going to die. Death has come to an end, just as God sentenced Adam and Eve and humanity to death in the beginning because of their sins. When there is no one else to live on this earth or to die on this earth under the condemnation of sin, the wages of sin is death, then death itself, and in the Greek that's the word thanatos, death, the actual act of the body physically dying, and hell, which is Hades, or the Hadean realm, where the spirits of those were kept in that divided paradise or torment. All of that is gone. All the dead have risen, and they have been judged. You have something?
I had to use because my writing in the other ones messed up, so I thought my Santechus, and it has the words, and the sea gave up the dead that were in it, and death and Hades.
Yeah.
The word Hades.
Yeah. Hades is, this is one of the situations that has kind of caused some problems because, again, in the King James translation, it uses the word hell. And the word hell is used for both the Hadean world and the final abode of the dead. And that makes it very difficult sometimes for people to interpret which one without having, again, the Greek or to be able to go into the Hebrew. And so we have the end of the heavens and the earth that now are. We have the dead having been raised and judged. And since that now has happened, there is no one in paradise, and there is no one in torments where they have been. All that's been vacated. And so when that has been vacated, it also, the purpose, its use is over, and therefore it too, death and hell, death and the Hadean realm, all of that has been cast into a state of destruction. And verse 15 says, and whosoever was not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. And so it's not like when you die, you don't know where you're going. I've said this before. The scriptures teach that. Lazarus was in paradise. Jesus told the thief on the cross, today you'll be with me in paradise. And there's also the place of torment where people so soon as you die, you're going to know whether or not your name is written in the Lamb's Book of Life. But there is still that time where we have to give an account of the things which have been done. We will stand, and it will, in that judgment, be explained to us in essence. We will be judged by those things. And when you're arrested for something and you're sitting in prison waiting, you generally know whether you did something wrong or not. And so again, we'll know as soon as we die our relationship with God, how good or how poor it was. And again, though it's not specific to me, in studying the scriptures, since everyone born into this world is born sinless, and we choose to sin, it would seem to me that, again, from the scriptures, everyone's name was in the Lamb's Book of Life. It was there. However, because of their sins and lack of reconciliation to God, not taking advantage of whatever system of salvation God offered as far as relationship, their names have been blotted out. It's interesting in the scriptures, it seems to always talk about the fact that your name is in there, it's written in there. It's not about working to get your name in there. It's being faithful to God to keep from getting your name blotted out. And so those whose names were blotted out, whose names are no longer written in the book of life, and like I said, they'd already know that because they have been in torment, are finally cast into the lake of fire, which is, again, the second death, a place where, again, an everlasting destruction from the presence of God. That's the language of the Apostle Paul in 2 Thessalonians 1. Jesus said that they would go into an everlasting punishment there in Matthew 25:46. Yes?
That sounds like a good lesson about time for Christmas.
What's that?
If you're naughty, you don't get nothing from Santa.
You're not on the list.
Your name's not in there.
And you know that's the naughty list and the good list and the naughty list. But again, if you're on Santa's naughty list, you get coal. But if you're on God's naughty list, or you're not on the good list, you are the coal. And so you're cast into that lake of fire. So we see in the book of Revelation, and really, technically, the revelation itself is really finished, even though there's 2 more chapters here, because for all of humanity, chapter 20 brings that to an end. For those who were not found written in the Lamb's book of life, there's really not much more to say about them. Because that part of history is over. But there is something about the new heaven and the new earth wherein dwells righteousness. Peter says we, according to his word, we look for a new heaven and a new earth wherein dwells righteousness. And so we have looked basically from the time that the church was established, the gospel began to be preached, those 33 to 70 years leading up to the destruction of Jerusalem, when we were in a transition period from the old law to the law of Christ, as we see the fulfillment, Christ's fulfilling of the law, and the church is going forth preaching salvation. And we've seen that under a period of some persecution, but we also see this declared 1,000 years where those live and reign with Christ up until the time that the devil again is loosed for a little season. But the loosing of the devil and the coming forth of deception triggers, in essence, the final judgment. And in 2 Thessalonians 2, it talks about the fact there that God would send them strong delusion. That is, he would allow them, and the loosening of Satan seems to be the coming forth of strong delusion, that they all might be damned who have and do not love the truth, but have pleasure in unrighteousness and in lies, who love the lies more than the truth. And so Paul seems to allude in 2 Thessalonians that there will be a period of delusion. There will be a period of strong delusion. And so that leads us up into what we again see today. And starting next week, Lord willing, as we come into 21 and 22, we will begin to discuss the concept or the idea of that new heaven and a new earth.
Why not make this the day that you and your family seek out the Church of Christ in your community? We encourage you to attend one of our worship times or Bible studies. God's grace, truth, and salvation is truly worth finding and knowing. May God bless and keep you as we walk together in His truth. And remember, as always, the Churches of Christ salute you. Our new programs are posted to Facebook and YouTube on Thursday afternoon, and they should be available for viewing by 7 p.m. We also encourage our viewers to visit our website at www.thechurchesofchrist.life. We ask that you like us on Facebook and share our programs. On YouTube, please share and subscribe for notifications. This program was pre-recorded.